May 22nd, 1945. 6:17 a.m. Southern Okinawa, near Shuri. The first sound is not gunfire. It's breathing. Dozens of people packed so tightly into a limestone cave that their shoulders press together. Their knees knock. Their ribs rise and fall in the dark like a single, shuddering lung. The air is thick with old smoke, damp rock, unwashed bodies, and a faint sour tang of fear that has nowhere else to go. You can't see the back of the cave from the entrance. The light dies a few meters in, swallowed by stone. Somewhere in that blackness, a child hiccups a muffled sob. Someone whispers, "Shoo," more plea than command. Near the mouth of the cave, Sato Emiko keeps her eyes on the slit of daylight. She's 22, though the last months have carved another decade into her face. Her hair is tied back with a fraying scrap of cloth, her work overalls smeared with dirt and concrete dust from weeks spent mixing cement, carrying shells, digging trenches for the Imperial Army. Her hands still remember the weight of a shovel. Today, they are wrapped around the strap of a small cloth bag that doesn't hold much of anything. Some rice husks, a family photo gone soft from sweat, a chipped hair comb. Behind her, the women murmur. Are they closer? Have you seen them? Is it true they never finish that sentence out loud. They don't have to. For months, the island has been saturated with the same message. The Americans are not human. They are demons, beasts, men who will do things so unspeakable that death, your own and your children's, is the merciful option. Emiko heard it in school, on the factory floor, from the shaken civil defense instructor who handed her a sharpened bamboo spear and told her that if capture came, she must use it on herself first. Now, bamboo is starting to feel like a joke. Outside, artillery thumps in the distance, the dull whump rolling across the hills like thunder. Each concussion shakes dust from the cave ceiling. It drifts down in soft gray curtains, catching the thin shaft of light like falling ash. Someone near the opening whispers, "America, Jean." American soldiers. Closer now. Emiko shifts her weight, trying to peer around the rock outcrop that half hides the cave entrance. The view is a narrow slice of ruined world. A hillside scraped raw by shell bursts. Charred tree stumps. A field that used to grow sugarcane and now only grows craters. The smell of burned earth, cordite, and something sweeter and more nauseating that she has learned not to name. She squints. At first, there's only smoke. Then movement. Figures crest the low rise. Men in unfamiliar uniforms, helmets with netting, rifles slung. They walk in a loose spread, not in tight parade ground lines like the soldiers she used to see in Naha. Their gear hangs off them in odd angles. Canteens, ammunition pouches, roll bandages, grenades. One of them turns his head, and for the first time, Emiko sees an American's face clearly. He looks tired, not demonic, not wild-eyed with bloodlust. Just a man with stubble on his jaw and lines etched at the corners of his eyes from too little sleep and too much sun. His cheeks are smudged with dirt. His uniform is stained with something darker around the knees. Emiko's heart slams against her ribs anyway. Maybe that's how demons disguise themselves. She inches backward, deeper into the cave, until she feels another body behind her. Emiko-chan. A voice breathes in her ear. Yuri from the textile mill, clutching her own bag like a shield. Are they here? Emiko nods once, not trusting her voice. A shuffle of movement ripples through the cave. Mothers pull children closer. An elderly woman clutches at the sleeve of a girl young enough to be her granddaughter. From the deeper shadows, a male voice speaks, hoarse, unsteady. It belongs to Tanaka's sensei, the schoolteacher who became, by default, the senior man in this hole when the last uniformed soldier left 2 nights ago and never came back. Remember what they told us, he whispers. Remember the pamphlets, the broadcasts. They will not spare you. If they find us, we must. He trails off. There's a silence where everyone hears the end of the sentence anyway. We must die before they touch us. His hand trembles as he holds up a single grenade. The metal is dull, almost black, the pin loop catching what little light there is. There are not enough to go around. There never were. Emiko's stomach turns. She has seen what grenades do to bodies. She helped stack the stretchers outside the field aid station when the wounded came in from the line around Shuri. She remembers the smell of blood and antiseptic, the way the medic's hands moved faster than thoughts. Now, that same brutal little lump of metal is being offered as salvation. Yuri's fingers tighten on Emiko's arm. I don't want to die, she whispers. Emiko, I don't. A shout cuts her off. Outside. English, sharp and foreign. The Americans have seen the cave. On the hillside, Captain John Hale raises a hand, and a line of men from Company 165th Infantry Regiment fans out. He's 30, from upstate New York, with a face the sun has worn down to bare essentials. Jaw, cheekbones, eyes that miss little. The men call him Johnny when they think he can't hear and Sir when he can. His boots squelch in damp soil as he steps around a shell crater. Cave at 1 o'clock. calls Sergeant Fraser, pointing with the barrel of his M1. Hale sees it, a dark slit in the limestone, half-screened by brush, the kind of place they've seen too many times since landing on Okinawa. Caves mean trouble. They mean machine guns you can't see, grenades from nowhere, suicide charges, voices screaming, Tenno Hika Bonsai, and boys barely old enough to shave trying to kill you with a bayonet because someone told them it was holy. Behind him, one of the newer replacements mutters, Jesus, not another one. Hale hears the edge in the kid's voice. Eyes sharp, he says quietly. Don't assume anything. Could be troops. Could be civilians. Could be both. He lifts his hand again, and the squad nearest the cave drops to one knee, rifles leveled. Corpsman Miller, the medic, hangs back just a half step, medical bag thumping against his hip. They've learned the hard way that Okinawa doesn't respect the Red Cross. A faint sound drifts from the mouth of the cave. Not a shot. Not a battle cry. Crying. A child. Hale's jaw tightens. He's seen what fear can do in a cave with civilians. He's seen women clutching grenades to their chests. Men trying to hurl themselves off cliffs with their families because they believed, truly believed, that surrender meant worse. He doesn't want to see that again. Lieutenant, he calls over his shoulder. A thin, bespectacled Nisei steps up, helmet low, carbine slung. Second Lieutenant Kenji Matsuda, of the language team, one of the MIS boys attached to their regiment. Sir, Matsuda says. See if you can get them talking, Hale says. Tell him who we are. Tell him we're not here to, He flicks his hand in a gesture that could mean a dozen things, none of them good. Matsuda nods, throat tight. He moves forward to a spot just left of the cave mouth, staying low, hands visible. When he calls out in Japanese, Emiko hears the words like something from a dream. Neon no, Josie ID Saka? Are you Japanese women? Her heart lurches. This is the trick they were warned about, isn't it? That the Americans would send traitors, men with Japanese faces and American hearts, to lure them out, to make them trust, to make what came next easier. Tanaka-sensei hisses, don't answer. But someone sobs. Another whispers, we are. Matsuda hears it. Hears the thin, quavering voice from the stone. He glances at Hale. Hale's eyes are on the cave, reading the shadows like a man reading a map. He knows this could go bad in a heartbeat. A hand on a pin. A misread movement. One shot, and the whole fragile moment shatters. He lifts his other hand. The signal as old as the first time you try not to spook a wild animal. Easy, he tells his men. Lower M. There's a startled pause. Then one by one, the M1 rifles dip toward the dirt. Barrels angle down. Fingers ease off triggers. From inside the cave, in that cramped world of sweat and whispers, Emiko watches something she has never seen before. The enemy making themselves smaller. Not charging. Not roaring. Not firing. The helmets still look like skulls. The rifles are still rifles. But the posture is different now. Less like hunters. More like men approaching a cliff edge where one wrong step takes everyone over. Hale takes a breath. He could shout, come out with your hands up. He could bark orders, demand surrender, threaten, warn. Instead, he looks at Matsuda. Ask them one thing, he says. Keep it simple. Matsuda blinks. What, sir? Hale's answer is so quiet that only the closest men hear it. And when Matsuda turns back toward the cave and cups his hand around his mouth, the words he calls out land like a shell in the middle of every story those women have ever been told about Americans. Onaka Jie Sukamashita ka. Are you hungry? They were expecting judgment. They get a question. In the cave, Emiko feels the world tilt. Surely she misheard. Surely that's not what an invading devil asks the people he's about to punish. But the question hangs there in the dusty air, cutting through propaganda, through months of terror, through the tight, shaking grip of Tanaka-sensei on his lone grenade. Are you hungry? Her stomach answers before her voice does. It growls, loud and humiliating in the silence. Every pair of eyes in the cave turns toward her. And for the first time since the shelling started, Emiko doesn't feel fear. She feels confused. Because if the Americans came to torture them, to defile them, to turn them into an example, why on earth would the first thing they want to know is whether she's eaten? Inside the cave, the question hangs in the air like smoke. Are you hungry? Onaka Jie, Sukamashita ka? The words sound wrong. Like someone has taken the script they were given, the one about devils and torture and honorable death, and swapped it for the opening line of a rice shop commercial. Emiko's stomach growls again, louder this time. It's almost funny, except nothing about this moment is funny. Tanaka-sensei's knuckles whiten around the grenade. Don't listen, he whispers. It's a trick. They will make you come out, and then. He can't bring himself to describe the then. He doesn't have to. The imagination is always worse. Near the entrance, a child whimpers. Okay-san, I'm hungry. Her mother clamps a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Outside, Matsuda waits, chest tight. He hears the echoes of what he just said bouncing back at him from the stone, and for a second, the absurdity almost breaks him. They are on an island where tens of thousands have died. Soldiers are still killing each other a few ridges away, and he is asking cave dwellers if they need a snack. But Hale had looked at him with that particular mix of weariness and stubborn decency that says do it anyway. He swallows and tries again, voice steady. "We are not here to hurt you," he calls in Japanese. "America no heitai desu. We are American soldiers. If you come out with your hands visible, we will not shoot." He glances sideways at the line of GIs. "Right, Captain." Hale doesn't take his eyes off the cave. "Nobody squeezes a trigger unless they see a weapon," he says, "or a blast coming out of that hole. These people look like they've had enough." The men nod, some slowly, some with visible effort. They've lost friends on this island. Good men cut down by hidden rifles and grenades clutched by people who looked a lot like the silhouettes in that cave. Trust is hard, but not impossible. Hale checks the faces nearest him. Frazier, Miller, the wide-eyed replacement whose name he keeps forgetting. He makes sure they watch him as he slings his M1, letting it hang by the strap. His hands are empty now. "You show them you're not afraid," he says quietly, and maybe they stop being terrified. Inside, the women shift and murmur. "Did he say they won't kill us?" Yuri whispers, as if her mouth can't quite shape the idea. "Americans lie," someone mutters from the back. "They lie with smiling faces. That's what we were told." Emiko stares at the pale wedge of daylight. She hears a different note under the words now, an accent. The man speaking Japanese is not from Okinawa, not from Kyushu or Honshu either. There's a stiffness, like he learned the language in a classroom, not a cradle. "Traitor," the propaganda voice hisses in the back of her mind. A Japanese face serving American guns. But another voice, smaller and more tired, whispers something else. "If they meant to kill you, why haven't they already?" Tanaka-sensei lifts the grenade a fraction. "If they take us," he says, voice shaking but determined, "they will defile us. They will use us." The radio said. What if the radio was wrong? The question comes from Emiko's own mouth before she can stop it. Head snapped toward her. Tanaka's eyes flash. "You question the emperors. I question what happens if we die in here for nothing," she says, words spilling out now. "We are already starving. We have no water left. If we stay, we die. If we go out," she swallows. "If we go out, maybe we die. Or maybe we don't." It's not courage. Not really. It's exhaustion with being afraid. The old man's hand shakes around the grenade. For a moment, Emiko thinks he's going to pull the pin and remove the choice from all of them. Then his shoulders slump just a little. He looks at the shadowed faces around him. Women, girls, one boy barely 12 clutching his mother's sleeve. "You will not go alone," he says to Emiko. "If anyone must see what awaits us, I will see it." He tucks the grenade into his jacket, as if afraid of his own fingers, and pushes his way toward the entrance, Emiko and Yuri close behind. The air near the mouth of the cave is cooler, fresher. It smells of smoke and crushed grass and the sea, far away. Emiko squints, blinking against the light. From her perspective, the Americans are still just shapes, khaki uniforms, round helmets, glints of metal. She forces her legs to move. One step, another. Behind her, the cave breathes with her. From the outside, it looks like this. A small cluster of figures emerges from a black slit in the rock, blinking, flinching. A thin older man in civilian clothes, one hand raised, the other hidden in his jacket. Two young women who look like they've stepped out of factory shift. Hair pinned back, trousers rolled, faces hollow. A knot of smaller shapes behind them, peering over their shoulders. GIs grip their rifles reflexively. "Easy," Hale says under his breath. "Easy." Matsuda steps slightly forward, palms open. "It's all right," he says in Japanese. "We see you. Hands up so my men don't get nervous, all right? Just hands where we can see." Tanaka raises both hands, each motion stiff with shame. He's been taught that surrender is worse than death. Now he's performing it like a pantomime for the enemy. Emiko follows suit, fingers trembling. She expects a shout, a blow, the crack of a rifle. Instead, she hears a soft clink. Metal on metal. She flinches. Hale has unhooked his canteen. He tosses it, underhand, so it lands in the grass a few feet in front of Tanaka. The older man jumps back as if it's a grenade. Matsuda almost smiles. "Mizu desu," he says. "Water. You drink." Tanaka looks from the canteen to Hale, confusion warring with suspicion. Slowly, as if both are fragile, he bends and picks it up. He unscrews the cap with clumsy fingers, sniffing as though the Americans might have somehow poisoned the smell itself. Then he takes a cautious sip. The water is warm, metallic with a hint of canvas. It is also the best thing he has tasted in weeks. His throat works convulsively as he swallows. Something in his face cracks. He holds the canteen out, not to Hale, but backward, to the cave, to the hands that reach for it. A child's hand brushes his. A woman's lips close over the opening. The canteen becomes a link, passing from person to person, each gulp small and reverent. Hale watches, expression unreadable. Emiko's eyes meet his for the first time. They're closer now, close enough that she can see the stubble on his jaw, the small nick on his chin from a rushed shave, the tiredness in his gaze that looks uncomfortably like her own. He doesn't smile. He doesn't bare his teeth or try to look friendly. He just looks solid, present, like someone who has no energy left for pretense. He says something to Matsuda. Ask them again, he murmurs. Make sure they understand. So Matsuda repeats, softer this time, as women and children trickle out behind Emiko, blinking like cave fish dragged into the sun. Onaka jie, sukamashita ka? Are you hungry? A murmur ripples through the group. Emiko opens her mouth. Her throat works, but no sound comes out. Yes, I'm hungry. I'm starving. We've been crouching in the dark listening to shells and stomachs for days. We've eaten roots and moldy rice and hope until none of it fills us. Her body knows how to answer. Her mind is still trapped in the echo of all those official voices saying, they will never feed you. They will only use you. They will hurt you until you're not you anymore. Behind her, a child blurts what the adults cannot. Hi, yes. The word is so small, and it is everything. Hale hears it. He doesn't know the vocabulary, but he knows the tone of a hungry child in any language. He turns his head. Fraser, he says, you holding out on us? The sergeant pats his pockets. Couple K-bars, some hard candy, 1 D-bar. Start with the chocolate, Hale says. Slow. They wolf it. They're going to be sick. Fraser fumbles in his webbing, pulling out a flat, familiar rectangle in a waxy wrapper. U.S. Army field chocolate. To a GI, it's just a bitter, chalky calorie brick. To the women watching his hand move, it looks like something from another planet. Here we go, Hale murmurs. Moment of truth. He nods at Matsuda. Ask them one more thing, he says quietly. Ask who's brave enough to take the first bite. And as the interpreter draws breath, Emiko feels every warning, every nightmare, every poster about American monsters pile up against the one simple fact in front of her. The only thing this man has raised toward her is water. And food. Something has to give. The chocolate looks like a brick of coal. Fraser turns it in his hand, the dark bar catching the hard Okinawa light. The wrapper crinkles softly, the printed English letters meaningless to the women watching from the cave mouth. To them, it might as well be a stick of dynamite. Emiko can't take her eyes off it. She hasn't seen sugar in months. Real sugar, not the memory of it. The last sweet thing she tasted was a single hard candy passed around the textile factory floor the day her brother Kai left for the army. Each girl allowed 1 lick before it moved to the next tongue. This smells faintly bitter, like cocoa and chalk. Matsuda clears his throat. Dare GA, he starts, then switches to simpler Japanese. Who is brave enough to try first? The word brave lands differently this time. Bravery, in all the stories, meant running toward bullets, throwing yourself under tanks, pulling pins with your teeth. Now, it apparently means taking chocolate from the enemy. There's a long, awkward pause. The women glance at each other, eyes darting from bar to boots to rifles and back again. Emiko feels her cheeks burn with the shame of wanting it so badly, of being afraid that if she takes it, something terrible will happen, as if kindness is the sharpest trap of all. Behind her, a small hand pushes at her back. Go, Yuri whispers, breath hot against her ear. You spoke. You go. Emiko spins her head. I didn't. You already stepped forward once, Yuri says. You can do it again. That's the thing about panic. Once you've ignored it once, it's slightly easier to ignore the second time. Slightly. Her legs move before she can talk herself out of it. She takes 3 steps out of the shadow of the cave into full daylight. The sun hits her like a searchlight, catching every stain on her clothes, every smudge on her skin. The open sky feels indecently huge after the ceiling of rock. From their fire line, the GIs see a thin woman in torn work overalls and sandals, shoulders hunched but moving. Several rifle barrels twitch upward on instinct. Hale's voice is low but sharp. Down. The barrels dip again. He watches Emiko come closer, every muscle in his body alert. He's scanning her hands, her waist, the folds of cloth where someone might have tucked a grenade or a small pistol. He sees nothing but bones and threadbare fabric. She stops a few meters away, close enough to see the sweat on Fraser's knuckles, but not close enough to touch. The sergeant looks at her, then at Hale, then at the chocolate in his hand. Sir, he says, as if he's still half expecting to be told this is insane. Hale nods once. Slow, he murmurs. Let her see every move. Fraser tears the wrapper, the sound crisp in the hush. He breaks the bar in half with a dry snap. A faint, bitter smell rises, more like coffee than candy. He holds one piece out, palm up, fingers open. Emiko stares at it. This is the moment, she thinks. This is where the mask rips away and the monster shows its teeth. Maybe there's poison in it. Maybe it's some cruel joke. Maybe Her stomach cramps so hard she almost doubles over. She hears herself ask, in a voice that doesn't sound like hers, "Daoshite? Why?" Matsuda translates in a murmur. Hale answers without thinking. "Because she's starving," he says. "And we've got more food than we know what to do with." Matsuda breathes once, then puts it into Japanese that fits the moment better. "Because you are hungry," he tells Emiko. "And we are not." The admission hangs in the air, naked and shameful and oddly generous all at once. For the first time, Emiko sees something other than threat in the American's face. Guilt and responsibility. Her hand moves. She reaches out, fingers trembling, and takes the piece of chocolate from Fraser's palm. His skin is rough and calloused, warm with the heat of the day. He doesn't flinch when her fingers brush his. He doesn't grab. He doesn't yank. He just lets go. The chocolate sits in her hand like a lump of night. She hesitates, then breaks off the tiniest corner with her teeth. The taste hits her tongue and her eyes close. It's not delicious. Not really. It's bitter, dense, gritty. It sticks to her teeth and coats her mouth. But there's sugar there underneath. Real sugar. The memory of childhood festival treats, of sweets her mother used to make when rice wasn't rationed and everything didn't taste like war. Her throat tightens. Tears sting her eyes before she can stop them. She hasn't cried since the first air raid siren, months ago, when she realized the world was never going back to what it was. She swore she wouldn't give the enemy that satisfaction. Now, a stupid chunk of American field chocolate breaks something open. She covers her mouth with the back of her hand, choking on a sob. Behind her, Yuri whispers, "Is it good?" Emiko nods, unable to speak. She breaks the piece in half and turns, hands out. "For you," she says thickly, "and the others." The movement is instinctive, food, shared. It's the oldest ritual she knows. Hale watches as the chocolate passes from hand to hand among the women, each taking a small bite, reverent and disbelieving. A child bites too big a chunk and grimaces at the bitterness, but still goes back for a tiny extra nibble before an older sister gently pushes her hand away. The GIs shift, something easing in their shoulders. "Hell," Fraser mutters under his breath. "Reminds me of my ma passing cake around the table when there wasn't enough to go around." "Yeah," Miller says softly. "Except we're the ones who bombed their houses first." Hale hears that too. He doesn't answer. On the Japanese side, something fragile is happening. The women are still scared. Their bodies know where they are, on an island being torn apart. But the narrative in their heads has developed a crack. The enemy asked if they were hungry. The enemy fed them. The enemy did not, in fact, tear them apart the moment they stepped into the light. Tanaka-sensei stands at the edge of the group, watching. His hands hang limp at his sides now. At some point, without realizing it, he has taken the grenade from his jacket and tucked it into the cave wall behind a rock. It sits there, round and sullen, suddenly less relevant. He clears his throat. "Soma Mason," he says toward Matsuda, voice hoarse. If we come out, all of us, will you separate the men?" He can't quite say, "Take us away." Matsuda translates. Hale shakes his head. "We separate fighters from civilians," he says. "We're not here to throw grandmothers in stockades." Matsuda edits again in Japanese. "We're here to finish the battle," he tells them. "Not to punish those who didn't start it." From somewhere behind Tanaka, a voice cries out, sharp, disbelieving. "You won't kill us?" The question is raw, childish. Emiko turns to see who spoke. It's the same little girl who said she was hungry. Hale's eyes flick to her. Something in his face softens. "No," he says simply. He doesn't add, "unless you try to kill us first." He doesn't add all the conditional clauses and combat exceptions that the manual would insist on. Sometimes, in war, you have to let a simple truth stand on its own 2 feet. Matsuda repeats the no in Japanese. It lands like a second piece of chocolate. Sweet. Unbelievable. Behind Emiko, in the cave, there's movement again. Not the rustle of people trying to hide. The shuffle of feet getting ready to stand. One by one, silhouettes begin to detach themselves from the darkness, moving toward the entrance. Hale sees it. "All right," he calls softly to his men. "This is the hard part. They come out slow. They've got their hands up. You treat them like human beings. You see a rifle or a grenade, then you react. Not before." He glances at Miller. "Get your kit ready," he adds. Some of them look like they haven't seen a doctor since Tojo grew his mustache. Miller nods, already unbuckling his bag. On both sides of the cave mouth, the air is thick with something that doesn't quite have a name yet. It's not trust. Not yet. But it's not pure terror anymore either. And just when it seems like this fragile, strange moment might hold, a shout echoes from further up the slope. English, urgent. "Captain, movement on the right. Bunker line still active." The battle just beyond their little clearing is not done with them yet. The shout from the right slices through the fragile stillness like a knife. "Captain, moving on the right. Bunker line still active." It comes from Private Morales, posted on the flank. His voice has that specific edge, urgent but not panicked, that says this isn't nothing. The women flinch as if the words themselves are bullets. Emiko's grip tightens on the scrap of chocolate she's still holding. The cave seems to tense behind her, the people within ready to snap back into the dark like an elastic band. Hale's head snaps toward the slope. He sees it immediately, faint but unmistakable. The darker rectangle of a dug-in Japanese firing position, half collapsed, brush hastily thrown over the top. In the swaying green, there's movement, a glint of metal. He swears under his breath. Of course, nothing on Okinawa comes alone. Never just civilians. Always a cave plus a gun, a family plus a fanatic, surrender plus one last man determined to go out in a blaze. He raises his voice, the command tone cracking across the clearing. Second squad, on me. Frazier, Miller, Matsuda, you stay with the civvies. Rifles that had been dipping toward the ground snap back up as half the line peels away, feet pounding across churned earth. Emiko watches them go, heart hammering. To her, it looks like all the kindness in the world just turned back into war in a single breath. Frazier curses softly, torn. Sir, are you sure? You got the chocolate, Hale says without looking back. You got the doc. You got the mouthpiece. That's enough to keep this from turning into a stampede. He's already moving, boots carving gouges in the hillside as he sprints toward Morales' position. The world splits in two. On the right, Hale's men slide into cover behind boulders and shell holes, helmets low, M1S and bars swinging toward the hidden bunker. Where? Hale barks, dropping beside Morales. The private points with 2 fingers. Right there, sir. Saw a flash. Could be a Nambu. Could be a periscope. Hale squints. For a second, there's nothing but brush and shadow. Then he sees it, a slight shift in the darkness of the bunker slit. The unmistakable, insect-like silhouette of a Type 96 light machine gun barrel nudging into position. Jesus, he mutters. We're standing in a firing lane. He makes a snap calculation. If that gun opens up, it will rake the clearing, the cave mouth, the women. All of this, the question, the chocolate, the first steps toward surrender, goes up in a storm of lead. He doesn't think. He acts. Smoke on that bunker, he yells. A GI farther down the line yanks a smoke grenade from his belt, pops the pin with his teeth, and arcs it in a perfect throw. It lands just short of the bunker and begins vomiting thick white clouds, obscuring the slit. Suppressive. Hale shouts. Rifles crack. A bar stutters, firing in short, controlled bursts into the brush above the bunker. Chips of wood and stone fly. Inside, whoever mans that gun hesitates. Smoke in the sight. Bullets snapping overhead. No clear targets. It's enough. Flank left. Hale snaps. Get up under that angle. 2 men break off, sliding down into a gully, moving low and fast along the slope. One carries a satchel charge. The other, a rifle, eyes scanning for tripwires. Hale keeps his head just high enough to watch the line. He knows that if that Japanese gunner decides to open up through the smoke, this little play could still end in disaster. Back at the cave, Frazier hears the distant firefight spool up. A rapid exchange of shots, the dull crump of a grenade, the metallic scream of ricochets. He forces himself not to look. Keep your eyes here, he mutters, more to himself than anyone else. We got our own mission. Matsuda swallows, nodding. He turns back to the cluster of women and children who have edged out into the light, then stalled, caught between retreat and surrender. Their eyes flick past him toward the noise. They're fighting other soldiers, he explains in Japanese, raising his voice to be heard over the distant gunfire. Not you. Captain Hale is making sure no bullets come toward this cave. Why? Tanaka-sensei asks, voice ragged. Why do you protect us? We were told we are the enemy. Matsuda hesitates, groping for words that can fit in this small, war-damaged space. You are not the one shooting, he says finally. That is enough for him, for us. Frazier, not understanding the language, but reading faces, decides to sweeten the deal the only way an American infantryman knows how. He rummages again in his gear, produces a crumpled pack of Chesterfields, and holds it up. Anybody smoke? He asks. A couple of older women flinch at the waving white paper death sticks. Emiko just stares. Tobacco has been as rare as sugar. Matsuda chuckles despite himself. He is asking if anyone wants a cigarette, he translates. Yuri presses forward a little, surprising even herself. My father used to smoke, she murmurs. Before. She doesn't finish. Before the longer war. Before rationing. Before shortages. Frazier gets the gist from her expression. He strikes a match on his helmet rim, the tiny flame bright against the cave's lingering gloom, and lights one. He takes a short drag, then offers it butt first. Yuri looks at it like it's a relic, then takes a cautious puff and nearly chokes, coughing, eyes watering. Then she laughs, a short, shock sound that turns into a sob halfway through. Frazier's grin fades. He looks away, throat tight. This sucks, he mutters. This whole damn world sucks. Yeah, Miller says, checking a girl's scraped knee. Welcome to the Pacific. On the right, the battle with the bunker resolves in a quick, brutal flash. The smoke is thick now, curling around the hillside. The bunker slit a dark slash within it. The flanking team reaches the angle Hale wanted, down in a shallow trench that leads right up to the side of the enemy position. Charge, one of them calls softly. They lob the satchel charge into the embrasure. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the bunker's front erupts in a shower of dust and splintered logs, a flat, concussive blast that you feel more than hear. In the echoing silence, after, no gun answers. Hale holds up his hand. Cease fire. The chorus of GIs obey, weapons dropping a fraction. The only sounds now are the crackle of settling debris and the ringing in everyone's ears. He waits. Nothing moves in the bunker. All right, he says quietly. That's one less surprise pointed at those people. He glances back, down, toward the cave. From up here, he can see the scene he left behind in miniature. A cluster of women and kids around his men, chocolate and cigarettes, changing hands. The medic's white armband a small, stubborn defiance of the rules of this island. It looks breakable, like a thin bridge thrown over a canyon. They need to get everyone across before someone decides to blow it up. He slides down the slope, rejoining his squad with a grunt, and jogs back toward the cave, boots skidding in loose dirt. Emiko watches him return. He looks different now, dustier, breath coming faster, a smear of something dark on his sleeve. There's an energy about him, like the charge of a storm that hasn't decided where to strike. She realizes with a start that when he ran toward the other gun, part of her expected him not to come back. That's what everyone does in this war, it seems. They leave. Brothers, fathers, soldiers in uniforms she recognizes and uniforms she doesn't. But Hale returns, to the same spot he left, to the same group of women who are now holding American canteens and half-eaten chocolate. He drops to one knee to be more level with the children, resting his rifle against his leg, barrel still pointed firmly at the dirt. Matsuda looks at him, question in his eyes. Hale nods. We're good, he says. That bunker won't bother anybody again. He wipes his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grime. All right, he continues, voice pitched low and calm. Let's try to get everybody out of that cave before someone changes their mind, on either side. Matsuda turns. He calls into the cave again, words echoing off stone. It's safe to come out. The gun that could shoot here is gone, he says. If you stay inside, you will starve. If you come out, you'll get food, water, medical care if you need it. We will take you to a place with more people like you. A murmur answers him, skeptical, hopeful, afraid. Tanaka-sensei steps forward, shoulders squared as much as his age and weariness allow. He raises his voice. We are coming out, he says to the unseen faces in the dark. One by one, hands visible. Remember everything they told us, and then look at what they do now. He takes a breath. If they meant to kill us, we would not be talking. He turns back to Matsuda, eyes shining with something like defiance, but aimed at his own government, not at the men with rifles. You told us, he says quietly, that you are not here to punish those who didn't start this. I choose to believe you. For today, it's the smallest truce. It's enormous. Behind him, the cave begins to move. Women, older men, teenagers, children, they file out slowly, blinking, shielding their eyes, hands raised as requested. Each new figure adds weight to the moment, makes it harder to turn this back into bloodshed. Hale feels the tension in his men rise with each emerging silhouette. So many things could still go wrong. A panicked gesture misread. A sudden noise. A trigger jerked by a hand that's been clenched too long. He knows it. Matsuda knows it. Emiko, standing in the uneasy space between lines, feels it like static on her skin. And just when it seems like they might actually get everyone out without an incident, one more figure appears at the cave mouth. He's not in work clothes. He's in a ragged Japanese army uniform, tunic torn, bandaged arm in a sling. His eyes are wild, his jaw clenched. And in his good hand, half hidden under the flap of his jacket, Hale sees the unmistakable round shape of a grenade. For a split second, everything narrows to one detail. Not the ragged uniform, not the bandaged arm, the grenade. Hale sees it the way an electrician sees exposed wire. Potential, not yet kinetic, but one bad decision from rewriting the scene in blood. His hand moves toward his rifle out of pure reflex. Then he stops. Every muzzle in the American line has twitched upward again. You can almost feel a dozen trigger fingers tighten, knuckles whitening, breaths catching in throats. Hold! Hale barks, voice cracking like a whip. The barrel of Morales M1 freezes halfway up. He hears the tiny, desperate edge in his own command and forces it down. Quiet. Controlled. Don't fire, he says more calmly. Not unless that pin comes out. Miller the corpseman mutters, Jesus, John. In front of them, the Japanese soldier sways a little at the edge of the cave. His face is gray with exhaustion. The bandage on his arm is soaked through, stiff with dry blood. The uniform hangs on him like it belongs to a larger man. His good hand is stuffed under his tunic, fingers clenched around the grenade, as if he's holding his own heart in his fist. Behind him, the women recoil. Emiko feels her hope recoil with them. Of course, a bitter voice in her head whispers. Of course it ends like this. One man, one grenade, one last glorious death. That's what we were told, wasn't it? Tanaka-sensei gasps. Shimoda he knows the man. That familiarity is somehow worse. Shimoda's eyes are glassy, but there's still enough fire in them to be dangerous. They told us, he rasps in Japanese, what to do when the Americans come. You gather them. You pull the pin. You take as many as you can. His gaze jerks toward Hale's line. They are devils. They will not spare us. Emiko's stomach turns. Just minutes ago, those devils handed her water, chocolate, cigarettes. They lowered their guns. They asked if she was hungry. Everything in her body knows that. Everything in his training denies it. Matsuda steps forward a fraction, hands still visible. Tamar, he says, quietly but firmly. Stop, please. It's over. Shimoda's lip curls. Traitor, he spits. You wear their helmet, their boots. You speak our words with American mouth. He lifts his chin, looking past Matsuda to Hale, as if glaring at the source of some fever. You think I will watch my people become slaves? He says. Better to die. Better they die quickly than live under. His breath catches on a cough. Tanaka-sensei pushes forward. Shimoda he pleads, voice trembling. Look at them. He gestures around. At Emiko, at Yuri, at the mothers and children still streaming from the cave. Look at what they're doing, Tanaka says. Did the devils from the radio bring water? Did they bring medicine? Did they give us a choice? Shimoda's eyes flick, unwillingly, toward the cluster of civilians. A girl no older than 14 is sipping from an American canteen, both hands wrapped around it like it might float away. An old woman has a bandage around her ankle that wasn't there 15 minutes ago, Miller's handiwork already spotted with dirt. A little girl clutches a half-finished chocolate bar, staring at Shimoda with wide, uncertain eyes. Onakagie, Suida, she tells him softly. I was hungry. They fed us. It's a small sentence. It hits like artillery. Hale can't understand the words, but he sees the effect. Shimoda flinches as if struck, jaw tightening, grip spasming on the grenade. Matsuda's mind is racing. If Shimoda pulls that pin, it won't just kill GIs. It'll rip through this entire fragile circle, women, kids, Tanaka, Emiko. The story of Are You Hungry will end in reddened fragments. He needs to get ahead of the narrative playing in Shimoda's head, the one that says dying the right way is better than living the wrong way. You think they are here to punish us? Matsuda says in Japanese, voice low but intense. Because that is what you were told. That is what we were all told. But look, he points at Hale. Does that man look like he is here to punish hungry women? He demands. Does he look like the monster from the posters? Shimoda glares. He killed our brothers. He snaps. Yes, Matsuda says quietly. And your brothers killed his. That is war. But this, he gestures around them. This is what comes after the killing stops. It can stop Shimoda-kun, if you let it. Miller shifts, sweat trickling down his neck. This is insane, he mutters. We're arguing philosophy with a guy holding a live frag. Fraser's jaw ticks. His eyes flick between the grenade and Hale, waiting for the order that refuses to come. Hale feels every nerve in his body screaming at him to end this. He could, easily. One shot. Two. The grenade either falls harmless, pinned still in, or detonates in Shimoda's grip, contained mostly by his own body. It would be ugly, but contained. And those women would learn something very simple and brutal about American mercy. It has limits. He doesn't want that. So he does something his drill instructors would have called suicidal. He takes a step closer. Just one. It's deliberate. Slow. His hands still away from his rifle. Every GI behind him tenses so hard the air vibrates. Captain, Fraser warns. Hale doesn't look back. He's watching Shimoda, measuring the distance, the angle, the way the man's eyes flick from his face to his chest to his empty hands. And then Hale does something else no manual ever taught. He speaks English, knowing Matsuda will follow half a heartbeat later. If you pull that pin, he says calmly, you will not die for the Emperor. You will die killing your own people. Matsuda translates, voice almost shaking. Shimoda's nostrils flare. Lies, he snaps. I will. You are standing, Hale says still calm, still inching closer, in the middle of women and kids. Maybe you hurt some of us, but you will tear them apart. You see that, don't you? His voice drops, the way you talk to a frightened animal in a barn. I'm not here to punish them, Hale says. I'm here to make sure they don't end up in the crossfire of our war and yours. Don't make me choose between stopping you and saving them. Matsuda turns it into Japanese as faithfully as he can. Shimoda's fingers tighten. Emiko can see the tremor travel up his arm, into his shoulders. He wants to be the man from the radio, the one who shouts "Bonsai" and explodes in a cloud of loyalty. The brave story mothers tell their sons. But there's a small girl with chocolate on her lips staring at him like he's a ghost. There's an old teacher whose hands shake as he reaches toward him, palm open. There are women who have spent weeks in the dark who just learned the word hungry doesn't always lead to die. It's a terrible thing to realize the story you plan for yourself might be wrong. It doesn't make you less brave. It just changes the target. Shimoda-kun, Tanaka whispers. If you must die, die later. Not here. Not with us in your hands. The soldier breathes hard, chest rising and falling under the torn uniform. His eyes stay on Hale. The captain's heart is hammering so loud he can feel it in his teeth. But his face stays still. If you want to fight, Hale says, you find a rifle and a helmet and you come at us on a ridge. You don't hide behind them. Matsuda repeats it. The insult is deliberate. Shimoda's jaw clenches. For a second, the coin spins in the air. Then he makes his choice. With a raw, wordless shout, not of rage, but something closer to despair, he yanks his hand from his tunic and hurls the grenade. Everyone flinches, but he doesn't throw it at the Americans, or at the women, or even at his own feet. He lobs it, awkward with his bad arm, into the empty field beyond the clearing. Hale sees the spinning, dark shape arc high, too high, and land with a thud in the open dirt. Down, he roars. Men dive. Women gasp and clutch children. The blast is sharp, brutal, a fountain of earth and smoke. Fragments whistle harmlessly overhead, pattering into trees and rock. When the sound fades, nobody is dead. Shimoda stands in the clearing, empty-handed. His shoulders sag. For a moment, the scene holds, a man stripped of his last dramatic exit, standing between two forces who both expected him to be something else. Then his knees buckle. He drops, first to a squat, then to a full bow, forehead to the dirt. I don't know how to surrender, he whispers, voice shredding. No one taught me. Matsuda swallows hard. He doesn't translate that. He doesn't need to. Hale understands anyway. He steps forward the last few paces until he's close enough to touch Shimoda. He doesn't. He just says quietly, now we teach each other. Then, louder, for everyone he calls. All right, we're done scaring each other today. Stack weapons, watch your sectors, and get these people some real rations. Sergeant, we're moving them back to the collection point. He looks at the women, at Emiko, at the small girl with chocolate on her chin. And as Matsuda relays the orders, the reality sinks in. The Americans did not come to punish them. They came to ask a simple, devastating question. Are you hungry? And now, having asked it, they're stuck with the answer. The clearing feels different after the grenade. Not because the trees have changed or the air smells less of smoke. Those things are the same. What's different is the way everyone is standing. A few minutes ago, the Americans and Japanese were arranged like two halves of a broken mirror. Facing each other, reflexes coiled, every gesture measured in calibers and trajectories. Now there's a third shape in the picture. Shimoda, kneeling in the dirt, empty-handed. He stays bowed for a long moment, forehead pressed to the ground, as if waiting for someone to decide what he is now. Soldier? Traitor? Prisoner? Hale studies him for a heartbeat. He thinks, if anyone up the chain asks, this man was incapacitated in the pacification of noncombatants. They don't have to know he disarmed himself. Morales, Hale says quietly, you and Kowalski get him up. Nobody roughs him unless he gives you a reason. Yes, sir, Morales nods. He and a broad-shouldered GI move forward, rifles slung. They each take one of Shimoda's arms, lifting him gently to his feet. The Japanese soldier doesn't resist. He doesn't look at them either. His gaze stays somewhere at the level of their boots. Miller, the corpsman, steps in without being asked. Bandage is a mess, he mutters. Let me at least keep the arm attached until somebody in the rear can yell at me about my technique. He pulls a fresh roll of gauze from his bag and starts unwinding the old, stiff fabric from Shimoda's arm. The wound underneath is angry, swollen, but not rotten yet. Shimoda flinches, more from surprise than pain. You treat me, he mumbles in Japanese. Matsuda translates. Miller doesn't bother looking up. If you're going to ride in our column, you're not bleeding out on my watch, he says. I don't care what uniform you started the day in. Matsuda relays that. Shimoda stares at the American patching up the arm he'd intended to use for a glorious death. Something in his face sags. It's not quite acceptance. Not yet. But another brick in the wall has shifted. Hale turns away from the little cluster and takes in a larger scene. There are more people here than he thought at first. The cave has been disgorging them in a slow, steady trickle, like a broken artery in reverse. 30, maybe 40 civilians now stand in the open, some still half in shadow, others fully in the white glare of morning. Women in faded work clothes. Old men with the stooped backs of farmers. Two boys with prematurely hard expressions. A handful of children clinging to skirts. They're all watching him. He feels the weight of that stare. The question in it. Were you? He blows out a breath. All right, he says, voice carrying. Let's get this circus moving. He gestures at a patch of flat ground away from the cave. Frazier, set up a quick staging area. Civvies here, weapons from their side in a pile over there. He nods at a low spot near a boulder. Miller, triage. I want to know who's going to fall over in the next 15 minutes and who can walk. He looks at Matsuda. You stay glued to me, he says. Every time I say something, you make it sound smarter. Matsuda almost smiles. I'll see what I can do, sir. He turns and begins barking instructions in Japanese, trying to sound more organized than he feels. Please move this way. We are taking you to a safer place. If you have weapons, leave them here. If you're hurt, sit down. The man with the red cross will help you. The phrase safer place feels strange in his mouth. He has seen the safe zones on the map, collection points, POW cages, hastily thrown together camps ringed with barbed wire, and knows they're not exactly comfortable. But compared to a cave with no water and a front line creeping toward it, they're another planet. Emiko edges forward with the group, Yuri clutching her arm. Do you think they will put us behind fences? Yuri whispers. Maybe, Emiko says. But fences around food are still better than walls around hunger. Yuri gives her a look, half fear, half reluctant agreement. Nearby, a little girl tugs on Emiko's sleeve. Obesan, she says, misguessing her age. Will we have rice there? Emiko almost laughs. The idea of endless rice seems as fantastical as dragons now. I don't know, she answers, bending down. But they asked if we're hungry. If they lie, she glances at Hale, at the men stacking their own weapons in a casual lean while keeping eyes outward. I don't think they will. Not after this. The girl gazes up at the tall American captain as if he personally controls the weather. Is he their officer? She asks. Yes, Emiko says. He doesn't shout like ours, the girl murmurs. Emiko thinks of the last Japanese officer she saw. Red-faced, screaming, veins bulging in his neck as he ordered men to hold a position that was already gone. The hardness in his eyes when he talked of honor. She looks at Hale again. He is giving orders, yes. But there is no triumph in his face. No joy in having these people in his power. Just responsibility. The heavy kind that makes your shoulders round. Maybe his shouting sounds different. Emiko says. Frazier and Morales work their way through the crowd, gesturing and pantomiming where words fail. Here, ma'am, yeah, you. Sit on this rock. You kid, get that blanket under her leg. Miller, she's got something going on with that ankle. Miller kneels, gently slipping off a sandal. The foot inside is swollen, skin rubbed raw from walking on bad ground and worn-out shoes. Gotcha, he mutters. We'll wrap it and pray my tape job survives the march. He looks up at the woman's face, then glances at Matsuda. Tell her she's going to be okay, he says. Might hurt, but she'll walk. Matsuda translates. The woman stares at him for a moment, then nods and whispers arigato. Miller grunts, embarrassed. Yeah, well, don't thank me till we get you somewhere with an actual doctor. Morales, meanwhile, is dealing with something else. A boy of about 12 stands stiffly beside an older man, his grandfather, probably, clutching a rusty bayonet. Morales motions at the blade. Hey, little man, mind if I take that? The boy's grip tightens. He's not threatening anyone. It's more like the bayonet is a security blanket. The last solid piece of a world that's crumbled. Morales sighs. Kenji, he calls. Help me out here. Matsuda approaches, crouching to get on the boy's level. What's your name? He asks in Japanese. Shinji, the boy mumbles. Shinji, Matsuda says. That is a good name. Important name. Strong name. He nods at the bayonet. This, it's sharp. If you fall, it will hurt you or someone you do not want to hurt. Shinji's jaw clenches. It is all we have, he whispers. To fight them. Matsuda considers, then holds out his hand. Not for the weapon, but for the boys. Today, he says, you fight by walking, by staying alive, by taking care of your grandfather. He nods at the old man, who stands swaying slightly but proud. Let's hold the sharp things for a while. You hold him. The old man gives a tiny nod. After a long pause, Shinji's fingers loosen. He hands the bayonet to Morales, who takes it like he's being loaned something important, not disarmed. Thanks, buddy, Morales says softly. I'll give it back when you're 40. Shinji doesn't understand the words, but he understands the tone. He squeezes his grandfather's hand a little tighter. In the middle of all this motion, Hale finds himself momentarily still. He stands at the edge of the group, watching his men move among the civilians, passing out spare canteens, breaking open field rations, rewrapping bandages with hands that, an hour ago, were meant only for killing. He feels tired, not the bone-deep exhaustion of marching or fighting, but the strange mental fatigue that comes from trying to balance two completely different rulebooks in your head at once. War says, protect your men, eliminate threats, keep moving. Something older says, look at them, they're hungry. He's aware, dimly, that this scene is not the one the folks back home picture when they think about Okinawa. They see maps with arrows, flags planted, Maybe a newspaper photo of Marines raising Old Glory on a cliff. They don't see this. A captain in a filthy uniform trying to decide how many of his precious rations he can give away without shorting his own line. Sir, he turns. It's Matsuda. They're asking where you will take them, the interpreter says. Hale nods, rolling his shoulders as if the answer is heavy. Regiment collection point, he says. Temporary camp behind the line. They'll get registered, screened, then passed further back. Maybe to a bigger island. Maybe to mainland later. Depends what Manila and Washington cook up. Matsuda translates, as best he can. America's army will move you to a safer place, he tells the group. There will be tents, food, and guards. It will not be home, but will not be a cave. A murmur runs through the cluster of civilians. The word home hits a raw nerve. Emiko looks up at the sky. There is no home left for her. The textile mill is gone. The street where she grew up is a line on a map under someone's boot. The only thing that feels solid right now is the question that started this. Are you hungry? Yes, she thinks. I am. For food, for rest, and for this to mean something. Hale claps his hands once, a sharp sound. Form up, he calls. We're moving in 5. Kids in the middle, older folks up front, so we keep the pace right. Frazier, you take point. Morales, rear guard. Keep your eyes out, but don't look like you're marching prisoners. We're escorting, not dragging. He looks to Matsuda. Tell them they're safe, as long as they stay between us, he says. That's a promise. Matsuda relays. For the first time, a few of the women straighten. Not much, just a fraction, but enough to say they heard it. The column that forms is strange. GIs in olive drab, rifles slung but ready, forming a loose ring. Inside, Japanese civilians walking in a tight cluster, quiet, careful, eyes flicking from one foreign helmet to the next. Shimoda moves with them, arm freshly wrapped, Morales and Kowalski on either side. He's no longer a soldier or a martyr, just another man in the stream, carried along by a current he didn't choose. As they start down the shell-torn slope, Hale falls in beside Emiko and Yuri without really meaning to. He doesn't know their names. They don't know his. They move in an odd, shared silence. After a few paces, Emiko finds her voice. She gestures toward the cave, now a dark stain on the hillside behind them. If you had not come, she says haltingly in a mix of Japanese and the few English words she knows, we died there. Matsuda hurries up to translate. Hale glances back at the cave entrance. He thinks of all the others they didn't reach in time. The ones who took another voice's advice and leapt from cliffs or pulled pins in Sidestone. We came to fight soldiers, he says after a moment. But the war doesn't always give you what you asked for. Matsuda passes it on. Emiko frowns slightly, trying to parse the meaning. You think we are, she searches for the word, mistake. Hale huffs a small breath. No, he says. I think you're the part of this mess that might still be fixable. He nods at the little girl, trotting along holding an empty chocolate wrapper, like a treasure. She grows up, he says. Maybe she remembers that the first thing an American ever said to her wasn't shout or a shot. It was a question. That's better than nothing. As Matsuda translates, Emiko feels something strange in her chest. It's not gratitude. Not exactly. Gratitude feels too simple for a day like this. It's more like a weight shifting. For weeks, every story she heard about Americans ended with horror. Now she holds a different ending alongside it. Rough, imperfect, but real. Are you hungry? Then here. She walks in silence for a while, letting the rhythm of boots on dirt settle her thoughts. Around them, Okinawa stretches out, burned, cratered, scarred. Smoke columns rise in the distance. The thunder of artillery still rolls, further away now, but constant, like an angry god that hasn't quite decided to rest. This little procession is just a tiny thread in the vast tapestry of the battle. But for the people in it, it is the whole world right now. And in the middle of that world is a question that will not leave Emiko's mind. Why do they ask it? Years from now, she will tell this story many times. To children who never saw a cave. To neighbors who lost everything. To herself when the nights grow long. And the part that always makes her voice catch is not the grenade, or the bunker, or even the taste of that first bitter chocolate. It's the moment when the enemy lowered their guns, looked at her like a person instead of a target, and asked very simply, "Are you hungry?" October 1963. Naha, Okinawa. The sea is louder now. There are more cars on the road, more neon signs, more American uniforms on the sidewalks than Emiko ever imagined when she was 22 and crawling out of a cave. But the ocean sounds the same. She stands on the seawall, a paper bag of groceries in one hand, the breeze tugging at the hem of her dress. Down below, kids splash in the shallows, their shouts mixing Japanese and English into a language that didn't exist when the bombs fell. Her daughter, Aiko, runs in circles with a group of other children, all knees and elbows, skirt flapping. Every now and then, she glances back to make sure her mother is still there. Emiko smiles. She still doesn't take that for granted. Mother, Aiko calls in Japanese, "Come down. The water's warm." In a minute, Emiko answers, "Don't go out too far." She turns her face back to the horizon. Somewhere beyond that line is the country that put boots on her island and chocolate in her hand. Somewhere far away, a man she never saw again might be living a life that also doesn't quite make sense of what they did to each other. Her fingers tighten on the grocery bag. The sound of boots on concrete makes her glance to her left. 2 U.S. soldiers are walking past. Young, crew cuts, clean uniforms. One has a camera slung around his neck. The other carries a paper cone of shaved ice, laughing as it drips down his fingers. They nod politely when they see her looking. "Ma'am," one says in careful Japanese, "Konnichiwa." "Konnichiwa," she replies, dipping her head. They keep going, their voices fading into the city noise. Aiko runs up the steps to the seawall, bare feet slapping. "Did you see their camera?" she asks, eyes bright. "He took a picture of the waves." I wave too. Emiko adjusts a strand of damp hair behind her daughter's ear. "Maybe you'll be in someone's photograph album in America," she says. Aiko's eyes go wider. "You've been to America?" she asks. "No," Emiko laughs. "But I saw Americans during the war." Aiko's curiosity snaps into focus like a searchlight. "You promised to tell me that story," she says, planting her little fists on her hips. "The one about the cave." Emiko hesitates. She has told it before, to neighbors, to her husband, to herself in the quiet hours. It never gets easier, but it also never feels less necessary. "All right," she says softly. "Let's sit." They find a spot on the seawall, legs dangling over the concrete edge. The wind tugs at Aiko's hair, scattering the salt smell of the tide. Emiko looks at her daughter's face. Round cheeks, quick eyes, the easy, unfractured trust of someone who has never had to choose between a cave and a question. "Back then," Emiko begins, "we were told many things about Americans." She doesn't repeat the worst of it. Some words don't need to be passed on. "We were told they would hurt us," she says instead. "That they would never show mercy. That if they found us, it was better to die than to be captured." Aiko hugs her knees. "And?" she prompts. Emiko looks out at the water. "And then they found us," she says. "We were hiding in a cave. We had no food, almost no water. We could hear the bombs and the guns. We thought it was the end." She can see it as she talks. The dark, the dust, Tanaka's trembling hands around the grenade, the feel of Yuri's fingers digging into her arm. "Soldiers came," Emiko continues. "They had guns. Helmets. Very tall. Very dirty." She smiles. "They look like monsters to me. And I think I looked like an animal to them. We all did. Thin. Scared." She pauses. "They could have shouted," she says quietly. "They could have thrown grenades inside. They could have done what we were told they would do." Aiko leans forward. "What did they do?" she whispers, even though she already knows the outline. Kids like to hear the important parts repeated. Emiko hears Matsuda's voice in memory, echoing off stone. She hears the word that cut through everything else. "First," she says, "they lowered their guns." Aiko's eyebrows go up. "But they were still enemies, weren't they?" "Yes," Emiko says. "But for a moment, they chose to be something else too." She takes a breath. "And then one of them asked a question," she says, in Japanese. So simple that I thought I had heard wrong. She looks at her daughter. "He asked, 'Are you hungry?'" Aiko blinks. "That's it?" she asks. "He didn't ask you to kneel? Or where the soldiers were?" "Later, yes," Emiko says. "But first he asked that, as if the most important thing about us, in that moment, was not which side we were on, but whether we had eaten." Aiko is quiet. The waves slap against the rocks below. "What did you say?" she asks eventually. Emiko smiles faintly. "Nothing," she admits. "My stomach answered for me. It made such a loud noise, everyone in the cave heard it." Aiko giggles, a sound that makes the memory less sharp. "I was so sure it was a trick," Emiko says, "that if I took what they offered, I would be giving them my soul. Or my dignity. Or something." She remembers the feel of the chocolate square melting on her tongue, the pain of her pride arguing with the joy in her body. "But they gave us water," she says. "Food. They wrapped the wounded. They carried those who could not walk fast enough. And when one of our own men tried to do what he had been told," she stops, picks her words, "to end everything quickly, they stopped him from taking us with him." She doesn't go into detail about Shimoda and the grenade. Some stories can wait. Aiko is frowning in thought. "But they were still the ones bombing," she says carefully. "They still destroyed houses. They still killed people." "Yes," Emiko says. "That is also true." She is not interested in repainting the war in softer colors. Truth is too scarred for that. "Americans killed many people here," she says. "The Japanese army did, too. Our own leaders told us lies that pushed us into caves and over cliffs. There is enough blame to feed a fleet." She looks at her daughter. "But the thing I cannot stop remembering," she says, "is that on one morning, one officer looked at us and saw hunger. Not enemies. Not numbers." Her voice goes soft. He asked that question and then acted like the answer mattered. Aiko watches a pair of U.S. Navy ships crawling along the horizon like gray beetles. Do you think he remembers you? She asks. I doubt he remembers me. Emiko says. He saw many faces before and after. Maybe I was just another hungry woman to him. But I think, she hesitates. I think he remembers the moment. The cave. The question. You don't forget when your enemy looks like a person again. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a small, folded piece of paper. A creased, age-stained document. It's written in English, in a neat, slightly shaky hand. The letterhead at the top bears a U.S. Army crest. What's that? Aiko asks. Something a friend translated for me, Emiko says. A few years after the war, one of the language men, like the one who spoke Japanese that day, helped me find the name of the officer. Captain John Hale. She traces the letters. He wrote this when he was asked for his report, she says. There is one line I never forget. She reads it aloud in English first, then in Japanese for her daughter. We encountered approximately 40 Japanese civilians in cave complex. They appeared malnourished and terrified. Ordered weapons lowered and rations shared. Enemy combatant attempted grenade attack. Was prevented without civilian casualties. She translates, then adds softly. And at the bottom, he wrote, I gave my men one order that I would stand by in any war. We don't shoot people who are too hungry to be dangerous. Aiko is silent for a long moment. Then she says, if you had died there, I wouldn't be here. Yes, Emiko says simply. And I wouldn't know this story. Aiko continues. And I would only hear the ones where everybody is a monster. Emiko nods. That's why I tell it, she says. Not to say the Americans were good or Japan was bad, or the other way around. Just to say, in the middle of something very big and cruel, one small decent thing happened. And it changed everything for us. She slips the letter back in the bag. War is made of bombs and decisions far away, she says. But it is also made of questions one person asks another. Questions like, she smiles faintly. Are you hungry? Aiko slides her hand into her mother's. I am, she says. But not for chocolate. For dinner. Emiko laughs, the sound carrying out over the water. Come then, she says, standing. Let's see what we can do about that. They walk back along the seawall, hand in hand, past American soldiers and Okinawan shopkeepers and kids who belong to both worlds and neither. Behind them, waves erase footprints in the sand, as if to say, this too will pass. But some things don't. Some questions echo. Decades later, in a small house in upstate New York, an old man named John Hale will sit at his kitchen table, reading a news article about reconciliation ceremonies on Okinawa. He'll sip his coffee, stare out at the autumn trees, and remember a cave. He won't recall every face, but he will remember how his men shifted when he told them to lower their rifles, how the cave seemed to breathe, how absurd and necessary the words felt in his mouth when he told his interpreter. Ask them if they're hungry. He'll think, not without guilt, of all the days he didn't get to ask that, of places where the war never gave him that sliver of choice. And he'll feel a small, stubborn satisfaction that at least once, on a battered island in 1945, he chose to start with a question instead of command. They thought the Americans were there to punish them. That's what the leaflet said, what the radio said, what the fear in their bones said. But when the moment came, the first words were not a sentence. They were an invitation to live. Are you hungry? Sometimes, in the ruins of a war, that is enough to begin again. Yendi,